Part 55. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 541. Chapter 541 Yan Chen. However, when talking about Yan Chen, everyone will invariably think of Luo Xian, the school belle in college and the object of so many people's obsessions, including the talented Yan Chen. Yan Chen likes to write poetry, like Suze Himo and Tagore. He is romantic, sentimental, and funny. There were countless girls who liked him at that time, but Luo Xian was the only one in his heart. The first time Luo Xian met Yan Chen was at a class friendship event. At that time, Yan Chen, who was quietly hiding in the corner reading a book, saw the smiling Luo Xian in the crowd, and the young man's heart softened. A seed of secret love was planted here. In the days that followed, Luo Xian received many love poems from Fen Yanchen. His writing skills were very good. Luo Xian was young at the time, and her face would turn red when she often read his poems. However, Luo Xian liked Xiaochuan Hai at that time, so she only attributed Yan Chen's feelings for her to her junior's infatuation with her senior. Who knew that this obsession would last for so many years? It is said that poets are the most sentimental, but Liuchen is an outlier among them. He is the most dedicated. Luo Xian learned from the phone call that even after so many years, Yan Chen was still not married. When he thought of Luo Xian, his mind was still as throbbing as a young man back then. In the past, Yan Chen thought that what was described in the poem was the poet's imagination. It was not until he saw Luo Xian that he discovered that there really was a lilac-like girl who smiled like a delicate flower that is too shy to endure the cold. From then on, Luo Xian became the eternal heroine in Yan Chen's poems. At the end of the day, Yan Chen learned that Luo Xian was now single again. The little fire in his heart burned brightly again, and he wanted to pursue her again. As long as Luo Xian is with him, he can give him a lifetime of love and care. Luo Xian hung up the phone perfunctorily without hearing a few words. She had always been a little afraid of Yan Chen's love before, and until now. It is true that he is very good, but Luo Xian feels that she is not worthy of him. What's more, she only has Xiaochuan Hai in her heart now. The words told Luo Xian that his pen name was Yi Luo. Luo Xian knew this poet, and she had bought his poetry collection before. Luo Xian herself is also a person who loves literature. When she was bored alone, she would read Yi Luo's poems. Yi Luo is best at writing poems about longing and love. She can clearly feel the emotion that the poet Yi Luo poured into when writing the poem, because the sadness of loss is revealed in every line of the poem. However, what Luo Xian did not expect was that the heroine in those poems, the heroine that the poet had been obsessed with for half his life, would actually be herself. Luo Xian felt a little sad after hanging up the phone, with Yan Chen's words "I will come to you" still echoing in her mind. In college, Yan Chen had always cared about Luo Xian in obscurity. When Luo Xian was unhappy, he would always receive interesting poems from him to make him happy. At first, Luo Xian did not know that the person who had been writing poems to her was him. Later, due to an accident, he was discovered. Only then did people know it was him. At that time, Xiaochuan Hai was already pursuing Luo Xian. After knowing that his good friend was trying to pry him into a corner, Xiaochuan Hai severed ties with Yan Chen. However, Luo Xian could still receive Yan Chen's poems. It wasn't until she and Xiaochuan Hai got together that those beautiful poems stopped. Luo Xian loves words, and she actually still retains those poems. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 542. Chapter 542 Escape from Death. As soon as Xia Ying entered the classroom the next day, Mu Niankai hurriedly looked up at her. Xia Ying met Mu Niankai's gaze. There was no visible expression on her face. She just quietly walked to her seat and sat down as usual. Muniankai held the pen holder tightly, and her lower lip was bitten until it turned a little white, but she never mustered up the courage to go find Xia Ying. Hanzija had already told her yesterday, and Xia Ying asked her to explain it to her face to face. Hanzija said, "I think Xia Ying's intention is very clear, that is, let you go and be subdued, let her see your true inner thoughts, don't play those imaginary things, and she will forgive you." Muniankai was so angry that she couldn't bear to go over and beat Hanzija up. "You also said, didn't you come up with this bad idea for me?" Hanzija said innocently, "Didn't I consider that you would never shame yourself and admit your mistake? Besides, you were too stupid to be exposed, otherwise this plan would have been more perfect." Although Muniankai didn't want to admit it, Hanzija was indeed right. "Since you want to be friends with others, show your sincerity." Hanzija's words have been swirling in Muniankai's mind. Muniankai was in a state of emptiness during class, thinking about what she should do and how to say it more appropriately. Until, during the break, the radio station's announcement rang. Muniankai's eyes suddenly lit up and she had a good idea. Muniankai stood up and walked out of the classroom. "Hey, Xia Ying, watch a song for me." Jun Chennai suddenly said to Xia Ying, who was memorizing the words carefully. Xia Ying raised her head and looked at the music score handed over by Jun Chennai. "This is a new song I wrote, the lyrics and music are all my own creations." Jun Chennai said to Xia Ying with a rather arrogant look. Xia Ying took it and looked at it seriously. "I said, the college entrance examination is about to take place, why are you still spending time writing new songs?" Jun Chennai stretched himself aside and said, "I promised my fans that I would release 3 songs this year, but I have a big drama in the second half of the year, so I probably won't have time to write songs. I just had the inspiration a few days ago, so I wrote it." "What's the big show?" Xia Ying asked casually. "Escape from Death." As soon as Jun Chennai finished speaking, Xia Ying's expression suddenly changed, and then she raised her head suddenly and stared at Jun Chennai with her eyes wide open. "What? Death Escape?" Jun Chennai repeated again, and then he did not forget to advertise himself. "I have auditioned for the work of the famous Hollywood director Clive. It is a drama with 2 male protagonists, and the other male protagonist is Hollywood." "No, just wait." Xia Ying suddenly interrupted Jun Chennai's eloquent statement, and then desperately searched for memories in her mind. Jun Chennai was frightened by Xia Ying's sudden reaction. Xia Ying's expression was very ugly, as if she had been frightened. Jun Chennai frowned and stared at her in confusion. "Why did you react so loudly?" Escape from Death, of course Xia Ying remembers this movie, and it was about to start filming at this point in her previous life. But there is one thing. In the previous life, it was not Jun Chennai but Qianye who participated in the filming of this movie. Qianye's acting skills have always been well received. He was very successful in the entertainment industry in his previous life, so this olive branch fell on his head. However, in this life, Jun Chennai's development has advanced by leaps and bounds, and he is even more powerful than the previous life. But at this time, Qianye's reputation was not so good. Unexpectedly, Jun Chennai would eventually play the leading role. Thanks to the little cuties Anruoyuxi and 15858 for their rewards. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 543. Chapter 543. I can tell fortunes, do you believe it? But this is not the most important thing. What is important is that when Qianye was acting in this movie in his previous life, he had a performance accident and became a vegetative state. If it was Jun Chennai who replaced Qianye in the filming of that movie in this life, would he also have to experience the tragedy of Qianye's previous life? Xia Ying didn't dare to think about it. Hey, what are you thinking about? Why are you so obsessed with it? Jun Chenai saw that Xia Ying ignored him for a long time, so he stretched out his hand and waved it in front of Xia Ying's eyes, trying to attract her attention. Xia Ying then came back to her senses and looked at Jun Chenai. Xia Ying became serious and said to him, Jun Chenai, do you believe that I can tell fortunes? Jun Chenai chuckled, why are you babbling? Xia Ying, however, had a serious face and continued, if nothing goes wrong with the script of Escape from Death, the script will be revised and finalized by the playwright Lanchester. Moreover, your assistant director is Christopher. After hearing this, Jun Chenai smiled and said, wrong, Anna is revising and finalizing the script now. The assistant director is not Christopher, but Alan. Xia Ying frowned slightly and said nothing. Because Death Escape is the most ambitious science fiction film in Hollywood in recent years, and Jun Chenai, a top traffic figure, joins the drama of two male protagonists. It was already very popular even before it was released, so Xia Ying remembers the details clearly. However, Jun Chenai just denied her statement. From this, is she worrying too much? Is everything different because of the butterfly effect? If it is really different, this is the best result. Hey, don't think about it, show me my new song quickly. Jun Chenai urged. Xia Ying lowered her head and continued to look. However, Xia Ying had only half seen when she suddenly heard a familiar voice coming from the radio station outside. Hello everyone, I am Muni Ankai. Today I would like to use the radio station to say a few words to Xia Ying. Xia Ying was startled when she heard this, raised her head and looked in the direction of the window. Xia Ying, actually I wanted to say this a long time ago, but because I was too strong, I never had the heart to apologize to you. At the beginning, I did a lot of bad things to you, and I was jealous of you. I take it for granted that you are that kind of bad girl. I always think that I am righteous and smart, so I have been bullying you and going against you since you entered Guangyang. But I didn't expect that I was the stupidest and baddest girl. But you were such a nice person that you forgave me and even regarded me as a friend later on. Just because of my phone call, you guessing that something might be wrong with me, he came to save me without even thinking. But what did I say to you? I said that I had never considered you a friend. But I regretted it after I said it. In fact, that's not what I thought in my heart. It seems that I never lack friends. I have so many friends around me. However, only I know how many real friends I have. Xia Ying, I'm sorry, I really hope you can forgive me and give me another chance to be friends with you. Muni Ankai's voice was still ringing on the radio. Xia Ying lowered her eyes, sighed, and said nothing. Jun Chenai, who was on the side, laughed mockingly after hearing this. Why is Muni Ankai apologizing in such a big way? I thought she was going to confess to you. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 544. Chapter 544 Reconciliation. Xia Ying was originally very touched, but because of Jun Chenai's embarrassing words, she felt strange in her heart. Muni Ankai's broadcast was discussed by the students in school all day long. They also found out that Muni Ankai and Xia Ying, two people who seemed to be enemies to outsiders, were actually friends. After school, Muni Ankai came to find Xia Ying again and sincerely apologized to Xia Ying again. Yeziaksun stood beside Xia Ying, silent the whole time, holding his breath and looking at Xia Ying and Muni Ankai. Xia Ying pursed her lips and looked at Muni Ankai opposite. Muni Ankai is such an arrogant person. He is willing to lower his head for her, apologize in front of the whole school, and come to apologize to her face to face. It can be seen that she is indeed sincere. Xia Ying nodded twice and said to Muni Ankai, look, interpersonal relationships are actually not as complicated as you think. As long as you are sincere, those false moves are completely superfluous. When Muniankai saw Xia Ying nodded in agreement and settled the differences with her, she grinned happily. She subconsciously took Xia Ying's arm and said happily, "Really? Xia Ying, have you forgiven me? Are we friends again? If someone doesn't cooperate with me because of the so-called interest relationship this time. Oh, I've already said that what I said last time was all angry." Muniankai scratched her head in embarrassment. Xia Ying actually still remembered the hurtful words she said that day. It seemed that she had indeed hurt her deeply enough. Xia Ying smiled lightly, "Yeah, okay. Ha ha ha, I'm so happy." Muniankai raised her head and said to the blue sky, "By the way, what's the situation between you and Hanzija now?" Xia Ying suddenly thought of something and asked Muniankai. Muniankai gave up pursuing Jun Chennai. Xia Ying heard Jun Chennai say that, but seeing Hanzija's reaction a few days ago, Muniankai told Hanzija everything. The relationship seems not to be simple. Muniankai was stunned, realizing that Xia Ying might have misunderstood something, and quickly waved her hands to deny it. No, 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 it's not what you think. Me and that scumbag Han, a little bit, a little bit. It doesn't matter if you lose it a little bit. So, Muniankai told Xia Ying about her cooperation plan with Hanzija. Xia Ying frowned when she heard this. "You two are really good at playing." Muniankai curled her lips, "I don't want to either, I'm forced to do nothing." Xia Ying laughed after hearing this, but she still felt that they were a good match for some reason. Why? Muniankai had something to do at home, so she separated from Xia Ying and Ye Xiaoxun in advance. Xia Ying and Ye Xiaoxun were walking on the road. Xia Ying suddenly turned around and asked Ye Xiaoxun, "By the way, Xiaoxun, actually I have always wanted to ask you, are you and Fan Xian still chatting now?" Hearing this, Ye Xiaoxun lowered his eyes silently, his obsidian eyes showing sadness. "There is none left." Ye Xiaoxun's voice was very soft, and Xia Ying could hear her loneliness and sadness. "In fact, this is quite good. Fan Xian is now with Yun Huan. It would be awkward for Ye Xiaoxun to chat with him again, and there really was nothing to talk about. It's not good for each other to keep wasting time. It's time for Ye Xiaoxun to step out." End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 545. Chapter 545. What happened to Yu Lingfeng? Since the last time Brother Xian and Huan were together, he deleted me. Ye Xiaoxun continued, "Maybe because I have a girlfriend, Brother Xian was wary of me and deleted me without saying a word." Ye Xiaoxun's voice revealed sadness that was difficult to conceal. Xia Ying stepped forward, hugged Ye Xiaoxun, patted Ye Xiaoxun's back, and comforted her. "Xiaoxun, don't be sad. Your first priority now is to study hard and write your novel well. To you, take responsibility for yourself and your readers." Ye Xiaoxun's eyes were red and he nodded. After Xia Ying returned home, she just opened the door when suddenly, a black shadow rushed in front of her. It is Yu Lingfeng, but there is a very strange thing. Yu Lingfeng usually looks distant and indifferent, but in front of Xia Ying, Yu Lingfeng's eyes are so clear and moving, like a child who is not familiar with the world. Yu Lingfeng stared at Xia Ying for a long time, and then suddenly pouted her lips slightly, and said to Xia Ying word by word with a childlike angry look, "I want a hug." Xia Ying was so frightened by these three words that she subconsciously took 2 steps back. Xia Ying carefully looked at Yu Lingfeng in front of her. She was different. It was obviously different. The cold chill in Yu Lingfeng's body disappeared, and instead he was like a little rabbit, very docile and approachable. Xia Ying suddenly doubted whether the person in front of her was Yu Lingfeng. Hey, cousin Sakura, stay away from that lunatic." Chu Sensio's voice came from behind Yu Lingfeng. Xia Ying looked at the source of the sound. Chu Shenxia was hiding under the sofa and said to Xia Ying tremblingly. Xia Ying was puzzled, and then walked forward. Yu Lingfeng followed Xia Ying closely. Xia Ying put down her skull bag and asked Chu Shenxiu, "What's wrong with Yu Lingfeng?" Before Chu Shenxiu finished speaking, Yu Lingfeng suddenly focused his eyes on Chu Shenxiu. Then the next second, Yu Lingfeng suddenly picked up a toy sword on the coffee table and ran towards Chu Shenxiu. "Monster, where can I escape?" When did you have such a thing as a toy sword at home?" Before Xia Ying could react to what happened, Yu Lingfeng had already chased Chu Shenxiu and ran all over the place. Xia Ying was confused. She was only in class. What earth-shaking changes had taken place in the world? Xia Ying walked towards Chu Shengming and 11 Ju who were on the sofa with shocked faces. Xia Ying asked 11 Ju, "What's wrong with Yu Lingfeng?" Zihu was also confused. He looked at Xia Ying and shook his head, "I don't know. Master has never been like this." Chu Shengming said awkwardly, "Well, I seem to know the reason." Xia Ying turned to look at Chu Shengming. Chu Shengming brought a glass of water from the coffee table and said to Xia Ying, "It seems to be its pot." Xia Ying frowned and became even more puzzled. The reason for a glass of water? A glass of water turned Yu Lingfeng into a child. At this time, Chu Shenxiu's voice sounded like a killing pig, "Help, please stop watching the excitement, someone is going to die." Chu Shenxiu was already exhausted from being chased by Yu Lingfeng, but this monster seemed to have endless energy. Chu Shenxiu said MMP in his mouth and MMP in his heart, "Hua country is too dangerous, he wants to return to S country." No, this is not a simple cup of water. As soon as Chu Shengming finished speaking, Xia Ying's face turned dark. 12th cousin, we agreed not to allow this kind of experiment at home. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 546. Chapter 546 Want to Eat Sweets. Chu Shengming frowned, looked into Xia Ying's reproachful eyes, and said, "I didn't do any experiments. This is just a simple glass of wine." Xia Ying was stunned after hearing this, and took it doubtfully. Then she got closer and smelled it. It was clearly not ordinary wine. It had no taste of wine at all. It was colorless and tasteless, just like a glass of ordinary water. Chu Shengming saw Xia Ying's doubts, so he explained, "I just did a little processing, added some things, and improved the ordinary liquor. The improved liquor is as colorless and odorless as water. And the effect is stronger than ordinary wine." "Is that just like this?" After Xia Ying finished speaking, she looked at Yu Lingfeng who was beating Chu Shenxiu furiously, and raised her eyebrows. "Then why did Yu Lingfeng become like this? Hey, why are you people so cold-blooded? This man is crazy. Are you going to die without saving him? I'm going to be beaten to death by him." Chu Shenxiu cried. At this moment, Yu Lingfeng was riding on him, beating Chu Shenxiu with his fists. Why are so many people in the room trying to get in trouble with him and insisting on chasing him to beat him up? He is provoking someone. This Yu Lingfeng must be poisonous. I don't know. Chu Shengming was also puzzled. Then he poured some of the improved wine into his mouth and tasted the taste. "It tastes good." Xia Ying turned to look at Chu Shengming. After drinking, Chu Shengming did not behave abnormally like Yu Lingfeng. In other words, the problem was not the wine, but Yu Lingfeng himself. At this time, 11 Ju also said, "We have all tried this, but only the master has such a problem." As 11 Ju spoke, he silently turned on his cell phone camera and recorded all of Yu Lingfeng's crimes. After Yu Lingfeng beat Chu Shenxiu wildly, He walked towards Xia Ying with satisfaction. Yu Lingfeng opened his dazzling black glass eyes and stared at Xia Ying. He pursed his thin lips and said sincerely, "I want some candy." After Yu Lingfeng said these words, Xia Ying's expression fell completely. Not only Xia Ying, but also Chu Shengming and 11 Ju also opened their mouths in surprise. 11 Ju's hand holding the phone trembled, and he almost dropped the phone on the ground because he didn't hold it firmly. Oh my god, both Xia Ying and 11 Ju know how much Yu Lingfeng hates eating sweets. To be precise, Yu Lingfeng hates sweet things, but now, Yu Lingfeng reaches out to Xia Ying like a child and asks for candy. What happened to Yu Lingfeng? Xia Ying turned around in panic and looked at Chu Shengming, who also expressed that she was helpless. The cup of stuff was normal originally, but who knew Yu Lingfeng would look like this after drinking it? Chu Shengming has no solution now. He can only take one step at a time, as long as Yu Lingfeng doesn't have any major problems. He wants to eat candy, then give it to him. Chu Shengming said. Xia Ying nodded, then turned around to find the candy and put it in Yu Lingfeng's hand. Yu Lingfeng carefully peeled off the candy wrapper as if he had found a treasure, then threw the candy into his mouth, showing a happy expression. Chu Shenxiu approached Xia Ying and the others with bruises all over his body, looked at Yu Lingfeng as if he were a monster, and then said, "What, am I right?" Yu Lingfeng, who has always been so cold, now acts like a child. Are you still eating sweets? Is there something wrong with him? End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 547. Chapter 547. Could it be Alzheimer's disease? Xia Ying rolled her eyes at Chu Shenxiu and said angrily, "Don't talk nonsense, Yu Lingfeng is not mentally ill." Xia Ying finished her retort, then approached Yu Lingfeng and said to him in a soft voice, "Yu Lingfeng, do you still remember who I am?" Yu Lingfeng was still peeling off the candy wrappers one by one, her mouth bulging with candy. Yu Lingfeng looked at Xia Ying and nodded, "Xia Ying." Xia Ying breathed a sigh of relief. Yu Lingfeng still remembered her. "Hey, do you think Yu Lingfeng has Alzheimer's disease?" Chu Shenxiu suddenly said. Xia Ying turned around, glared at Chu Shenxiu, and said, "If you don't speak, no one will treat you like a mute. I said, let's take him to the hospital for a checkup." Chu Shenxiu curled his lips and said, "Really, no one can tell who was chasing him like a crazy gorilla just now. That's it, it's no wonder that there's nothing wrong with your brain." It seems that he guessed correctly. Yu Lingfeng must be an old monster. He is old now and has dementia. Chu Shengming touched his chin and suddenly said, "Has Yu Lingfeng drunk before?" After hearing this, 11 Ju thought for a moment and then shook his head, "No, master never drinks alcohol." After Xia Ying heard 11 Ju's words, she suddenly remembered that she took Yu Lingfeng to the KTV that day, and Yu Lingfeng also refused their drinks. In Xia Ying's impression, he seemed to have never been touched by alcohol. Does Yu Lingfeng become mentally retarded when he comes into contact with alcohol? Chu Shenxiu was extremely afraid of the Tao when he thought about it carefully. Xia Ying gave him a roll of her eyes and ignored him. Instead, she turned to Chu Shengming and said, "It's better to send him to the hospital for a checkup." Xia Ying took out another handful of candies and said to Yu Lingfeng, "Yu Lingfeng, listen to me and I'll give you candies, okay?" Yu Lingfeng listened carefully, and then nodded obediently. Then, Xia Ying took Yu Lingfeng's hand and took him and Chu Shengming out together. Xia Ying raised her forehead helplessly. Why did Yu Lingfeng become like this? After arriving at the hospital in the city center, Xia Ying asked Chu Shenxiu to check in, and then Chu Shenxiu checked into the neurology department. Xia Ying's face darkened. Although it felt strange, Yu Lingfeng seemed to be more suitable for neurology at the moment. After their turn, the doctor asked about the condition as usual. Xia Ying hesitated and didn't know what to say. When the doctor learned that Yu Lingfen became like this after drinking a glass of wine, he was so surprised that his glasses fell under his nose. Then, Chu Shengming handed the glass of wine to the doctor. The doctor asked the assistant on the side to take it for testing, and then asked Yu Lingfen to take a film to check the situation. However, when the doctor saw the results of the film, it showed that there was nothing wrong with boredom and that he was normal. There is nothing unusual about the composition of the wine, but when communicating with him, he does behave like a child. Physicians feel that their careers have been challenged as never before. So, he quickly called the head of the department. After hearing about it, other doctors came over to see this special patient. So, Yu Lingfen was suddenly surrounded by a bunch of doctors and nurses. Of course, the nurses came here mainly because they were attracted by Yu Lingfeng's good looks. It's really strange, no matter what tests I've done, it's normal. What about the intelligence test, did you take it? I did it. This person is still a genius with a super high IQ. But he behaves like a child. I really can't understand it. And he suddenly became like this. Thank you little cutie popular male grandpa Mao. More rewards. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 548. Chapter 548. Could it be a dual personality? A group of doctors gathered around Yu Lingfen, and they began to express their views and opinions one by one. Xia Ying and Chu Shenxia were standing aside, with expressions of despair on their faces. Even the doctors can't figure out what's wrong with Yu Lingfen now, and they don't know when Yu Lingfen will return to normal. What are you doing? Xia Ying was in despair when suddenly, a familiar cold male voice sounded. Xia Ying trembled when she heard this, her pupils dilated instantly, she immediately stood up from the stool and walked towards Yu Lingfen. This voice and tone belonged to Yu Lingfen. Yu Lingfen had already broken away from the group of doctors before Xia Ying came closer. Yu Lingfeng's face was cold, as if as ice, and his eyes were serious, making people tremble wherever he went. The doctors were all shocked. Suddenly, they seemed to be different people. Tone of voice, expression, eyes, everything is different. Yu Lingfen, are you okay? Xia Ying looked up at Yu Lingfen in surprise and asked. Yu Lingfen frowned, looked at Xia Ying, and asked with confusion, why am I here? Furthermore, there is a very sweet taste in his mouth. Wait, what is he holding in his hand? Sugar? Or white rabbit toffee? Yu Lingfeng suddenly felt his stomach churn, and then, with everyone watching, he rushed out of the ward and ran towards the bathroom. Xia Ying followed Yu Lingfeng out and looked at Yu Lingfeng's series of behaviors in confusion. The doctors were still praising it, when suddenly, someone mentioned something. Could it be multiple personalities? Xia Ying was startled after hearing this. Multiple personalities? Yu Lingfeng's performance just now is really similar. However, Xia Ying did not think about it deeply, but sat on the corridor of the hospital with Chu Shenxiu and others, waiting for Yu Lingfen to come out. Yu Lingfen looked ugly when he came over. He had just induced vomiting in the bathroom for a long time to get rid of the disgusting sweetness from his stomach. I don't know how many times I rinsed my mouth before the cloying sweet taste finally disappeared. Yu Lingfen walked up to Xia Ying and the others and glanced at them coldly. Everyone could feel the temperature of the air around them starting to drop, and Chu Shenxiu couldn't help but shiver. Yu Lingfen opened her thin lips and said coldly, "Who gave me the candy?" What Yu Lingfeng said seemed to be asking, "Who will die next?" Yu Lingfeng is usually quite cold, but the way he gets angry is even more intimidating. Xia Ying raised her hands tremblingly and met Yu Lingfeng's eyes innocently. "I." Yu Lingfeng frowned slightly, and his eyes softened a little. "Why did you give me candy? You don't know that I hate eating candy. But it's you who pestered me to give you candy." Xia Ying said that she was also very innocent. Yu Lingfeng took a breath, held back his temper, and finally said nothing. What's wrong with your face? Yu Lingfeng suddenly glanced at Chu Shenxiu again. Chu Shenxiu looked bruised and swollen, and he kept gnashing his teeth and staring at him, which made him confused. Are you still embarrassed to ask? Chu Shenxiu had such a bad temper, it's not you who beat me. Yu Lingfeng frowned and said nothing. He doesn't remember. Xia Ying asked cautiously, Yu Lingfeng, do you have multiple personalities? The one who transforms when you drink alcohol. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 549. Chapter 549 Royal 3 years old. No. Yu Lingfeng's tone was firm. Then you just stop talking about this, go back. Yu Lingfeng obviously rejected this question. Before Xia Ying could finish speaking, he interrupted her, then turned and left. Xia Ying and the others followed him. Xia Ying looked at Yu Lingfeng's back with a blank face, feeling that she could not understand Yu Lingfeng more and more. Zihu, are there many secrets about Yu Lingfeng that even you don't know about? Westju tilted his head and thought for a while, then said, of course, the master usually likes to keep his worries in his heart. And I don't have the courage to ask him. Hold everything in your heart, can't you even tell her? Xia Ying thought so and suddenly lowered her head in a lonely manner. However, I think the master will tell you when the time is right. 11 Ju saw that Xia Ying's expression was not right, so he quickly said. Xia Ying nodded lightly. At first, Xia Ying didn't know Yu Lingfeng's identity. Didn't Yu Lingfeng tell her later? So 11 Ju felt that Yu Lingfeng just needed some time to brew. Maybe now is not the time to talk about this matter? Anyway, 11 Ju can guarantee one thing. In his master's heart, Xia Ying was definitely above all else, more important than his own life. He once almost risked his own life just to help Xia Ying. Zihu couldn't help but sigh when he thought about the past. After returning home, Yu Lingfeng looked at the mess in the house, froze and did not take a step forward. Upon seeing this, Chu Shenxiu quickly walked up to Yu Lingfeng and said to Yu Lingfeng, these are all crime scenes that I specially asked them to keep. As Chu Shenxiu spoke, he took the sword that was thrown on the ground and said to Yu Lingfeng as if he was complaining, look, this is the murder weapon. Don't you even remember that you are holding it, Jian? You thought you were a superhero and came here to chase me? Yu Lingfeng turned blue upon hearing this. He actually did such a shameful thing. Yu Lingfeng moved his throat but said nothing. Hey, just say something. The injuries on my body were all caused by you, Yu Sansui. Yu Lingfeng heard the title Yu Sansui and resisted the urge to step forward and beat Chu Shenxiu again, but said indifferently, if you want to try again, you might as well continue talking. Chu Shenxiu met Yu Lingfeng's piercing gaze and was immediately frightened. Chu Shenxiu swallowed hard and suppressed all the crimes he wanted to make. Really, it's unreasonable. It's clear that he is the victim, but the murderer still threatens him with a just and awe-inspiring look. Yu Lingfeng, how are you feeling now, are you okay? Xia Ying asked with concern. Yu Lingfeng nodded, then looked into Xia Ying's watery eyes, thought about something, and said, I'm fine, don't worry. This kind of situation will never happen again in the future. Is it because of the alcohol? Xia Ying asked. Yu Lingfeng originally didn't intend to answer, but looking at Xia Ying's caring eyes, she finally nodded. Chu Shengming had been observing Yu Lingfeng silently. His physique is really special. Not only is his IQ different from ordinary people, but his physical fitness is also much better than ordinary people. This is what he has concluded after observing Yu Lingfeng for more than a year. Now, he has discovered another attribute of Yu Lingfeng, that he cannot touch alcohol. What is this strange feature? End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 550. Chapter 550 IQ is 3 times that of ordinary people. So did I grab your pigtail? Chu Shenxiu put an ice pack on the side and said slowly, but Yu Lingfeng, you are really strange. The director of the Department of Psychiatry said that in all his years of medical practice, he has never encountered such a strange case as yours. You also said that your IQ is 3 times that of ordinary people. Oh my God, what kind of concept is this? How did your parents give birth to you? Chu Shenxiu couldn't stop talking as soon as he started talking. He was immersed in his own soliloquy. Chu Shenming silently observed Yu Lingfeng from the sidelines. Yu Lingfeng's special case is of great research value for researchers like Chu Shenming. However, according to Yu Lingfeng's temperament, he definitely doesn't want to be his guinea pig. He had to think of a way and find an opportunity to study it carefully. Master, I recorded a series of your actions just now. Do you want to take a look? 11 Ju approached Yu Lingfeng very obediently, took out his mobile phone and handed it to him. He guessed that his master would be interested, and since he couldn't remember anything now, he must have wanted to know what he had just done. Yu Lingfeng frowned and looked at himself in the video. The more he looked, the heavier Yu Lingfeng's face became. He knew he would lose his composure, but what he didn't expect was that he would lose his composure so seriously. It was simply a shame that he had been thrown to his home planet. Yu Lingfeng deleted the video before it finished playing. Chu Shenming had just finished his research and walked toward them happily holding the colorless and tasteless wine. He said he wanted them to have a taste. Yu Lingfeng's expression changed the moment he took the drink. He thought it was some kind of special drink, but he never thought it was wine. Then, what just happened? I want to be quiet. Yu Lingfeng walked towards his room with a tired face. Xia Ying followed him silently. Yu Lingfeng walked to the door of the room, stopped, looked back at Xia Ying, a strange light flashed in his eyes. I'm fine. Xia Ying put her hand on the back of Yu Lingfeng's warm hand and said, Yu Lingfeng, no matter what secrets you have that are not known to the public, whether they are good or bad, but if you have any questions, please tell me, don't hide it from me, okay? This was just an accident and it will never happen again. Yu Lingfeng looked firm, then leaned forward, with tenderness in his eyes, and pressed a gentle kiss on Xia Ying's forehead, then turned and walked into the room. Xia Ying turned around a little lonely and returned to the living room. Chu Shenxiu raised his eyes to look at Xia Ying and said, Cousin Xia Ying, what's wrong with you? Are you unhappy? No. Xia Ying shook her head, and then glanced at Chu Shenxiu. Tisk, 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 Yu Lingfeng's attack is really heavy. Forget it, let me help you. Xia Ying's words almost brought tears to Chu Shenxiu's eyes. His cousin Xia Ying actually cared about him so much. He was willing to be beaten by Yu Lingfeng again. Ah! This wonderful world, this wonderful life. What's your expression? Xia Ying frowned and looked at Chu Shenxiu's lustful expression with disgust. This guy shines brightly just by giving him some sunshine. Cousin Sakura, please leave me alone and let me roam in my spiritual world. Xia Ying had a dark face after hearing this. When we were in the hospital just now, why didn't we check your brain too? These 2 chapters are additional updates from yesterday's reward. Thank you to the little cuties Qing Sheng and Hioru and Mochien for their rewards. There will still be more updates tomorrow. Love you. End of this chapter.